Welcome to Educate, Inform, and Challenge. My name is Teresa MacLennan. I'm Executive Director of the Women and Children's Shelter of Barrie. We are so thankful that you have joined us today and that you come alongside us in our conversations as we talk to wonderful people in our community. Of course, the purpose of our show is to talk about the lives and experiences of women. We talk about gender equity, we talk about violence, we talk about women in business, but we also talk about wonderful folks in our community that use their voice to end violence against women, that support many local agencies and the work that we're doing. And we always want to create a platform to highlight those very good, kind people in our community who will be our guest today. Before we begin, we always want to acknowledge and thank our Indigenous community. Thank you for your culture, your history, your heritage, the learnings and the knowledge that you share with us. We thank you for allowing us to have these conversations on these lands. Thank you. So I am delighted today to introduce my friend to our viewers, and I'm sure that many of you may know him and the wonderful work he does, but we really want to create a platform where we can honor him today and learn more about the work he does. So I want to introduce and just say an incredible welcome to my friend, Steve Jones from Local Leaf Farms. Hi, Steve, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Teresa. Even better being able to spend time with you.
And that is why we just love Steve, because Steve always offers words of encouragement to us and our agency and the work that we do. And we're going to get to know him a little bit more. So I want to start off, Steve, and just ask you about what the work is that you do at Local Leaf Farms. Of course, your position there, but talk to us about what is Local Leaf Farms.
I jokingly said yesterday, I can never answer that in a 30-second elevator pitch, but we are a vertical farming corporation. We have two locations, one in Barrie, one in Kingston. The plan is to do 20 of these across the country. And vertical farming is that we grow herbs and leafy greens, lettuces inside. And unlike a greenhouse, we grow them inside industrial buildings. So I'm speaking to you right now from Churchill Drive. A lot of people know it as they drive over to the stores over at Park Place. So we grow indoors. We sell into the retail communities. And really what we're about is about sustainability. So some of your viewers, Teresa, will go online and Google vertical farming, and they'll see these 50 and 60,000 square foot facilities. Our model was to be community oriented. So by growing in smaller facilities in communities, we can put our food on the shelf within 48 hours. So it's fresher, it's more nutritious. Our carbon footprint of distance is 50 to 100 kilometers instead of 3,800 coming from California. We're the only producer that puts our product in a plastic-free compostable container. So that is all to say that we grow leafy greens, but what we really do is we're building a model for sustainability. And really that includes how we engage our communities.
It's absolutely incredible. And you know what? It is such not an environment that I would know anything about. And I have been to your space and it is, well, I think I would just say the words overwhelmingly incredible. And I am sure that it takes a very sensitive environment to be maintaining the vertical farming. Like, can you talk to us just about how intricate that is?
If I brought my director of operations in, he'd tell you a whole lot more about how intricate it is, but it is complicated science. My background spans investment banking to medicine, and I don't think anything is quite as complicated as growing plants inside. The reason is whether you grow a head of lettuce outside in the soil or you put it in a greenhouse, in those environments, there's a lot of airflow. They only grow it once, they cut it down. If it was a greenhouse, they would sanitize it and then they start over. But at any one point in time, we have 60,000 plants in 6,000 square feet. And it's constantly rotating from little baby seedlings to mature plants that are going out. So we don't get to shut it down and sanitize the room, which means that when you are there and others, you'll see the employees, they look like they're in a pharmaceutical facility in all the biosecurity gear that they wear because the environments are extremely controlled. Verticals actually goes by the name controlled environment agriculture. So the temperature, the humidity, the light spectrum, the hours of light, but also pest management. It is a contained control environment so that we can get more nutrients into the plants. We can eliminate the need for pesticides or herbicides, but it takes a lot of work.
Absolutely. And I'm sure if you just have one thing that infects or changes in, like you say, the temperature, humidity, all those pieces, I should imagine that could be disastrous to your operation.
Well, it's like the Bible. If I got a thrip in there, let alone locusts, I'd have myself a real problem. But our challenge is most vertical farms grow just microgreens or very baby leaves. So they take it down so quickly, they don't have as much of a risk of having a problem. We grow these beautiful big flower heads of butterhead lettuce, as it's called, and we grow it in 4 weeks. So we can grow it 3 to 4 times faster than outdoors. But we're the only ones that grow this mature head. And to your point, if our temperatures are off, if our humidity is off, if the nutrient fertilizer is off a little bit, we can't grow that. We can't send it out to a Sobeys or a Goodness Me. The business side of it's compromised, but all the plants around it are compromised because ultimately plants actually talk and they send off pheromones. So if one plant is bolting or it had a problem, it will tell its friends around there that it's not happy, and then that becomes a real challenge for us.
It's amazing. This is wonderful learning. And I love that because I think that there's so many of us in the community that would not know how intricate this is. And it is just a wonderful, there's a wonderful consciousness that you've also put into your work with Local Leaf Farms in terms of the climate and trying to be sustainable and local, support, and that we want our community to support local business, right? So I just love how you've encompassed and thought about all of those things, which I think is so helpful for all of us to know and recognize, because we do want our community, our viewers who are listening, to support local. And we absolutely encourage you to check out Local Leaf Farms, their websites, and get to know them. There's something also very, very special about Steve and Local Leaf Farms. And you might be wondering, because of course we are a show where we do talk a lot about our work here at the shelter. You might be wondering, what is the connection between Steve and ourselves? Steve and Local Leaf Farms is one of those amazing agencies, businesses, that supports the work that we do here by supporting our women and children. And so there's a lot that we're going to say about that. And I just really want our community to get to know Steve because he's such a caring individual and cares for the work that we do in our women and children. So maybe a good place to start that I want to also ask you about is the connection between Local Leaf and the Janice Laking Community Garden.
We're really proud of it. When we took over this space again on Churchill, just in from Welham Drive, there had been 40 shipping containers, those big steel ocean-bearing containers in the back, and it was all caged off. And the landlord said to me, if you take the building, you can rent that space out, make about $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And I was standing out there and looking at it once all the shipping containers had been removed, and it was just a gravel pit. And what I thought is, yeah, we could rent this out and make a little bit of money, but we're deeply committed and passionate, Teresa, as you know, about food security. And I was looking at this massive yard and I thought, why don't we just put a regular outdoor community garden in? Because right now, community gardens are just those very small plots that you get from a city and you have to rent it. And a lot of people can't. And this was also 2020. So it was COVID. So long story short, we put in a community garden that's almost 2,000 square feet out there. It's extremely large. And we've been able to build a real, pun intended, community around it. We have relationships with yourselves, the food bank, the Busby Center, the community fridge that we host, the Barrie Native Friendship Center, where they have a plot in there that they're growing traditional herbs. And we're able to grow food there that immediately goes straight into agencies. Because of COVID, we haven't been able to allocate plots to people. That'll probably change next year. But we work with the Barrie urban gardeners and some volunteers that come in. It's 25 rows, and the rows are 100 feet long, so you can get a sense of the amount of food that we produce. But we also have pollinators all around the outer edges to tackle that problem. So the Janus Lake and Community Garden, excuse me, is meant to tackle food security. It's meant to raise awareness of it. It's meant to make a tangible impact by harvesting food every week that goes directly to people. And it's an opportunity for different stakeholders to come together, such as when your ladies and children were able to come and spend an afternoon, understand soil and harvest the food that they eat. And that's deeply heartwarming for us and for my staff.
It is so wonderful. And I just really hope that our viewers are really catching that. And there's a lot more ways that you support us that I think, we're going to head into a short commercial soon, and we're going to dive a little bit more into that. And I really want to talk about where that comes from for you, this desire to give back to the community. But I think I will just share something with our viewers as we do head into a commercial, is the event that you spoke about. So for our viewers, Steve invited our women and children who are in our shelter, and also women who access our services from the community. And we had a beautiful summer day, and Steve was there. I was there, and dressed in a dragon costume for the kids. And we also had our wonderful City of Barrie Councillor Anne Marie Kungle dressed in a bumblebee costume. So we had women and their children from shelter and community come. And for many of them, they have never had that experience of community gardening, of coming together like that. In fact, we had an immigrant family where the children had never seen carrots being pulled out of the ground before. It was an incredibly wonderful experience to be a part of, to see the joy and the laughter amongst the women, but their children as well. And it was an experience that so many of them have never had. And what ended up happening was they were invited to pick the vegetables from that garden and to bring it back, and it sustained them for such a long time. They still speak about that event and the incredible impact that that had on them. So that is just one example of how Steve and his group have made a commitment to giving back and creating this incredible event that truly had a significant impact on the women and children who've never experienced that before. And they received these wonderful vegetables that really sustain them. So we are going to head into a short commercial. We're going to come right back to Steve, and we're going to dive more into about his nature of giving and where that came from. So stay with us, and we will be right back.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details. Watching hockey just got a power play with NHL Center Ice and Super Sports Pack. With up to 37 out-of-market NHL games a week, you'll always catch your favorite team no matter where you live. Whether it's big matchups you're looking for or following your top fantasy picks, it's all here. NHL Center Ice, part of the Rogers Super Sports Pack. All this for only $35.95 a month. Say Super Sports Pack into your voice remote to order.
Welcome back to Educate, Inform, and Challenge. We're having a great conversation with my good friend, Steve Jones from Local Leaf Farms. And we're just really talking about, of course, the work that he does with Local Leaf, but also his spirit of giving back to the community. And we hope that that's an encouragement for our viewers just to recognize, how can you be part of your community, right? And so I know that Steve has talked about having this wonderful event where we had women and children come. But, Steve, I know that there's other ways that you have supported us as well. And you know what? I'd like to ask you to kind of talk about that a little bit. If you can remember all the ways that you support us, and if not, I can help you. But have you thought about that? Can you share with our viewers other ways that you've kind of walked alongside us?
I think the obvious one is, Teresa, that in developing our model, which is very different, it's not just being more sustainable, it's being more socially responsible. So 5% of what we grow inside every week is sent out to stakeholder agencies that we personally are deeply committed to and care about. And one of those organizations is yourself. So we're able to provide year-round, highly nutritious, ultimately fresh produce that in your case, I believe the women in the shelter are able to utilize. And I know that the shelter's developed its own cookbook, so hopefully we can continue that and help people. Unfortunately, the North American diet doesn't consume a lot of leafy greens. People don't always know how to use them. So if they got our beautiful butterhead, they don't think about making a wrap out of it. So we provide food weekly, and what we're really trying to do is not just feed people, but build community around supporting each other.
And we were able to provide training and education to the women about what to do with those beautiful leafy greens. And then that is what spurred us to make that cookbook with the recipes of using those wonderful ingredients. And for our women and children, poverty is such a key issue for them. And unfortunately, when you live in poverty and very low income, you tend to buy more canned goods instead of knowing how to prepare fresh, healthy meals. And so it's been such a wonderful gift, and also learning for our families, to have that wonderful produce and then to really educate them and then create a cookbook with the recipes that the women have used. And they'll take that when they live in their forever home and know how to sustain their kids. And we love that that has happened. I also know that this past year in September, I remember seeing you at our Walk a Mile in Her Shoes event, Steve. Can you talk to our viewers about why you supported that event? Why did you come out to that event?
It had been several years since I had been at it, but I'm very proud of the team that we have here. So our director of operations, Dimitri, and our horticultural lead, Andrew, also came out, which I took some personal joy in walking behind them and seeing that these gentlemen could not walk in those heels very well. I didn't take as much joy in the skin that I guess I left behind. But the reason that we all did it is, as men, we know that there's a need and importance for us to stand alongside victims and support services and share our voices and our disdain for what we know occurs in the community. So it wasn't just a charitable event. We don't do a lot of those together, but we're committed to always showing up at that event so that our voices are heard as men, not just supporters.
I could not have asked you or said that any better, because I really wanted to ask you about why is it important that we hear the voices of men? Because, women have been trying to make change about ending violence against women, of course, for years and years, but boy, do we ever need the voice. And we value that of men, because we can say it, but men have a particular wonderful influence with other men when they use that voice. Steve, where does that come from for you? Did you grow up with mentors or parents, or how did that develop in you, that sense of using your voice, the sense of giving back and supporting your community? Where did that come from?
I've asked my siblings that many times and I've never had an answer because we are different around it. I think, and I guess I'd have to have a therapist weigh in. I went to an established private school in Toronto, and I saw the entitlement and I saw the wealth of a lot of my classmates, and frankly, it bothered me. And it drove me when I was 17 to start working at the Scott Mission in Toronto. And I think it just became a bit of a snowball from there. I recognized my privilege. I saw the great need that's out there. I saw that need across many different avenues. And as I, certainly grew in my personal life or professional, I realized that the somewhat cliche term "giving back" matters. I can't directly quote the great Martin Luther King, but he identified that along the way, one of the greatest things you can learn is the importance of doing something for someone else. So no, it's not widely shared necessarily within my family. It's something that developed in me, and it's brought me to Local Leaf, whereby our investor base, the people that come to work for us, they have on a spectrum a commitment and a passion about legitimate social involvement, social impact, and like all of us, it's a journey. It's a life's journey.
When I think about how you really support us and walk alongside us, and you use your voice, your words are beautiful and so supportive to our work in particular, as I know they are for so many agencies. What do you think the barriers are for some men to be able to use their voice? If we think about in particular the context of ending violence against women, what do you think that difficulty is for men? I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
A lack of evolution in what is the nature in which men, the peer pressure, the way they bond, the way they communicate. I don't think we need to look any further right now than the sport that I loved immensely and played to junior, which is hockey. And if you take a look at what's going on at Hockey Canada, not just the violation of women, but the fact that an association, a board thought it best to cover it up. It's at the very root of which how men have learned to communicate through their mentorship or just being allowed. And it simply hasn't changed. I was actually having this conversation the other day because I never watched the show Mad Men when it was out, and I've been able to catch up on it. And the degree of misogyny that's in that is my father's era. But yet it hasn't changed. When I was in my gym on the weekend, there was a couple of young men that would be like 19 or 20 talking the kind of locker room talk, and they had the old man, myself, weigh in and advise them. So I think the answer is this: we just haven't evolved as a society in the way that men are encouraged to communicate. And when they're caught, well, we see agencies like Hockey Canada demonstrating why this is allowed to perpetuate and continue.
And what you really spoke about kind of is we're really a campaign that we're heading into, which is our Wrapped in Courage campaign. And because we recognize that the courage of women alone is not enough to end violence against women. And the voices and the knowledge and the action of men is so vitally important to truly ending violence against women. And part of that action can be, really supporting and encouraging men. How are you going to debunk locker room talk? And can you pull on your own strength and what you know to be right and true to challenge it? And we know that can be very hard for a lot of men to be able to do. And that is why the mentorship of men such as yourself, what I can see is just so, so important to stop it, to interrupt it, and maybe try and build knowledge. And so we really encourage men to wrap women in courage. And by using your voice and taking action like Steve has done is one of those ways that you wrap women in courage to know that they are supported in the community and to be able to leave abusive relationships. And so I think that Steve is a wonderful model for all of us and our viewers. We would just really hope that you hear his men's voice, and it's something that you think about, adopting and learning more about. And he is a great mentor for that. So, Steve, we have about 5 minutes left, and our time has gone by so fast. But I feel like there's so much more that I want to talk to you about. But I think I want to ask you this question: how would you encourage other men to use their voice, to become involved with agencies, to give back? How would you like to be that mentor and teach other men about the wholeness about who you are? It's a big question, I feel, but there's so much that so many folks can learn from you.
Well, I don't think I would ever want someone to wish to emulate me in any way. I think the first part of your question was, how can they start to identify ways in which they can use their voice? And it has to start with what they're passionate about. But it requires some pretty difficult internal soul searching, checking in your own values and your own behaviors. As much as I got off of Facebook and Instagram, and I don't think highly of traditional social channels, I'm still on Twitter because I can't give up that political side. And there's a channel on there, the Good Men Project, that posts daily many, many different thought-provoking, self-awareness issues. So I would suggest that you don't have to go in the Indigo and look through and spend hours in the self-help books, but if you start listening to males' voices questioning behavior, that can be a starting point. When I confront, for lack of a better word, a couple of young men in a locker room, the confusion on their face meant that they hadn't stopped to think about that. They had never had another male challenge them in any way. So the first part is just thinking inwards about your past, the environments that you've been in. And the second one is, if you're passionate about it and you start to become aware of it, use your voice in arenas that matter. Not everyone is willing to speak out in a locker room. Lord knows far too many people to speak out on social media, but social media can be used for the good. The Good Men Project is one of them, but when you see overt commentary online, provide a response. I dare say, since we're having this conversation a couple of days away from municipal elections throughout the province, become mindful about Bill 5. Become mindful about the fact that we don't have protections of municipal employees from municipally elected officials. And certainly here in Barrie, that's a concern.
Yeah, absolutely. The election is right around the corner. Bill C5 is so important, holding municipal leaders accountable for violence and harassment in the workplace. And we encourage everyone to become fully aware of all the issues heading into this election. And it is a very important election. Use your voice. And we were given this wonderful privilege to be able to vote, and we absolutely need to. So,
yes,
Steve, I cannot thank you enough. And in relation to what you spoke about, absolutely, the Good Man, the Kind Man Project, seek that out. We encourage our viewers to do that on Google. And you will get great resources and encouraging words and education so that you can educate others. Also, White Ribbon. White Ribbon is another great organization to take a look at, and that is men using their voice to end violence against women. Thank you so much, Steve, again. I cannot wait for us to have a level 2 conversation because there was so much to talk about. It has been a privilege to know you and just to talk with you today. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for being with us today, and we will see you next time. Take care.